Thank you very much, Jesse. Welcome everybody to Ho Chi Minh. It's really a pleasure for us to be in your city, and so far from the first day, I think we've all been surprisingly pleasant about how many people came here. We had over 1,800 people coming to the conference itself, and I hope you've enjoyed all the interesting panels and talks so far. So now get ready for the most interesting one, the one that I'm chairing. We're going to talk today about talent sourcing in Southeast Asia. We're going to do an overview through the discussion with some very interesting experts here that are activating in a region of employment practices, what actually constitutes a source of hiring, what are their best strategies, and also maybe some mistakes that are being made in the region. So I'd like to welcome on stage first Christopher Natsuume. I hope I'm pronouncing your name well. I asked you before, but I forgot. He's the co-founder of Boomzap Entertainment based in Japan, but they have an interesting way of doing offices, which he will explain. Please. Second, Giang Anh, the CEO of Joy Entertainment. Hi. And third, Jakob Lykkegaard, originally from Denmark, activating in Thailand from Playlab, CEO. And finally, our French-Vietnamese connection, Guillaume Monier, CEO of Glass Egg, based in Vietnam here. Welcome, guys. How are you feeling? So initially, we're going to start with a short introduction of each of the experts panelists here on maybe giving a bit of information on the company, where they're activating, and yeah, a very brief one, and then we're going to go to the real questions. Please.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Guillaume. I'm a CEO of Glass Egg. Glass Egg is originally a 3D art outsourcing company. We are established here in Ho Chi Minh City since 1999. So it's been since 95 originally, but we've been incorporated in 99. So it's been almost 20 years that we are operating here in the local market. So we provide art outsourcing for international game developers. And since about 3 years now, we are also developing our own mobile games for worldwide market.
Thank you. Jakob?
I'm Jakob. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Playlab. Playlab is a game development studio turned also late-stage accelerator type. We grew from around 20 to over 100 people last year, with 100 people hired in that area regarding this panel. And basically produce games that are mainly for the Western market, but now changing focus a lot for Southeast Asia as well, based in Bangkok and Manila.
Hello, I'm Giang Anh. I'm CEO of Joy Entertainment. We're based in Ho Chi Minh City. We have 45 people are working on mobile game, mostly MMO, and just nice to stay here.
Hi, I'm Chris Natsuume. I'm one of the two co-founders of Boomzap Entertainment. We're about 72 people right now, spread across 20 cities in 14 countries, primarily in Southeast Asia. We've been around for about 10 years now, and we work primarily in mobile games. We also did downloadable PC and Mac titles as well. And currently we're also working in publishing in Southeast Asia.
I'm going to start with a general question. From this, we can go more into depth. I was wondering, from my own perspective, lack of experience in the region, and so there's quite a lack of talent in the Asian industry, the mobile gaming industry. I was wondering, what are your experiences, why the region is trailing, at least in a perception way? How can it be overcome? What kind of successful practices you've experienced firsthand in your recruitment practices so far? Let's go with you first.
Okay, I'd like to start by disagreeing. I don't actually think there's a lack of talent in Southeast Asia. In fact, I would say some of the most exciting talent in the world right now, Southeast Asia. What the problem in Southeast Asia is there's a lack of experience. If I were to go to the West Coast of America, or if I were to go to Europe and look for a 15-year experienced programmer, that person is available. If I were to look for that person in Manila, no, he's not available. There wasn't an industry 15 years ago in Manila. So while we do have a lack of experience, especially at the managerial level, because we simply don't have a lot of studios that existed long enough to have managers in these regions, in terms of raw talent, I think you're looking at an extremely exciting area. Cities like Manila, Singapore, Ho Chi Minh, Bangkok, these are full of young people who are at an early stage in their career, and given appropriate training, given appropriate management, and given an appropriate situation, I think are some of the brightest talents in the world right now. And in fact, I would say, especially Manila for me, is probably the most exciting city in the world in terms of growing new talent.
Thank you. We're going to talk later about what are the regional differences. You can explain these as well. What do you guys think? Is there a lack of talent or just experience, or how do you see it from your own eye?
Yeah, I can only agree with what Chris said. When it comes to recruiting junior people, you have a lot of choices. People are very motivated, very young, very excited about it here in Vietnam. But when you look for leads, when you look for higher level people, someone with 10, 15 years experience, they just don't exist, mostly. So it takes a lot more time for us to get there, but you gotta be patient, you gotta invest in training. Training is key, mentorship, growing people. We believe in growing people internally, so a lot of our recruits are fresh out of school. Then it's the effort that the company wants to make in order to grow the talent to become managers, leaders later on. If you're looking for 15 years experience, lead coder specialized in Unity with C++ background and this and that, no, you're not going to find that. So you need to be a little bit more specific and train and believe in people. A lot of people have difficulties to spot talents. It's something that for us foreigners especially, it's a lot harder to do, to spot talents. But they are there. You just need to know how to look at, where to look at, and how to grow potential talent.
Yeah, like the training for us is also the most important part, because the best people we have are somebody that have been with us for a long enough time to have the experience to now do what they do and are the best of what they do in that. We had a lot of success in, for example, our Bangkok studio by having more mid-level junior local, and then 45% of our Bangkok office is actually foreigners. So we have around 15 different nationalities at that office. We have a hard time finding people that can scale a server, people that have data analysts, that side of it. And most of those people we find in Europe and US, bring them in and then have give them a full team of locals that they can also train up to a more senior level and lead further teams around. So we do bring a lot of knowledge from outside into Thailand and also into Manila, and then basically train people up, because the creativity is there, the excitement for games is here, and that's the most important. So I was in other tech companies before, and it's a lot more difficult to find good developers outside gaming. But because there's so much passion in gaming, people are really hungry to learn and grow within the...
Totally agree. Just some comment, talent still over there. So in Vietnam, we have a lot of good programmers. We have a lot of artists. They have a high skill, but the more challenge is how to join them, how to combine, how to group them as a team. Because now most of good programmers, they prefer to work like outsourcing or foreigner companies, not like for studios, not for game companies, because they maybe have higher salary. And for artists, they prefer work freelancer. They want to be like freedom. They want to work like at night and sleep at day. And it's very hard to group them. And for me, I have to draw real. I mean, I have to show the vision to them. Like we want to make a high quality game in South Asia, in Vietnam, and because like Jakob mentioned, a lot of people here want to make game. They have a lot big passion in game. So if they know, oh, this guy wants to match something big, they will follow, they will try to match something big.
I'd like to add one last bit. I've been working in games a long time. Speaking as a very experienced developer, I can tell you most of my older experience is worthless. And so when people talk about needing somebody with a deep, long experience in game development, I think you reach a point of return. The mobile game industry is not that old. Unity is not that old. A lot of the things that are important for somebody to know right now really aren't that old. And a lot of the learning that you know, people who've been in the industry a long time have had to take is rather new. And so I think while we all make a point that there is a lack of experience in the region, I don't think that's as crippling as we might make it sound, because if you can find somebody who's even 5 years experience, 3 years experienced, you're still talking about somebody who's been here for the majority of lifetime of what's going on in games right now. So while they may not have the direct experience in high-level architecture or that sort of thing, a lot of the other experience in dealing with the game industry right now, any experience older than about 5 or 8 years, is really, you're reaching a diminishing point of returns in value. And so I think even though we all talk about a lack of experience, when I contrast that against the positive of having a wealth of extremely intelligent people that come from very good educational backgrounds, that are very excited about games, I think the balance is way in favor of finding talent here versus finding talent in a region like the Western Coast or Europe, where there's a lot of baggage we don't talk about that comes sometimes with an older industry and with a lot of experience.
Thank you very much for your insight. It seems that creativity, talent are one of the best features here. Also passion, games. Now, I would like to take the discussion a bit into a more empirical understanding of regional basis and country division. Since you've been probably activating and hiring in several countries in Southeast Asia, I was wondering, how do they differ from one country to the other? But how do you specifically act your hiring strategies in a given market? Do you change your role? Do you change your approach? How do you see it from territorial perspective?
So I can start with, like between our two studios in Manila and Bangkok, there's a few things that are very different. So our Manila studios, there are no foreigners. There's a lot of interns as well, because you have the half-year forced intern. At our Bangkok office, on the other hand, there's almost no interns, and half of that office are foreigners. So where the fun comes in is also that if you try to get people from Europe and US, they're a lot more interested to come to Thailand than to the Philippines. And for us, that's a direct hiring strategy. Yeah, we have like Joachim, our main headhunter, going out, finding people that have talent overseas. We give them a 2 weeks vacation to Thailand. They always stay, they love the job, they bring new knowledge and new passion. So for that, it's awesome. That's the main difference. It's really attractive place to. Are you jealous now?
You should hire me.
I'd like to approach it, because I think I'd like to start by saying it's very dangerous to start talking about Vietnam is this way, but Philippines is this way. You can accidentally go into something that might be considered racism, start making generalities about this is the way that Filipinos are. And that can be dangerous because it's simply incorrect. That being said, I think the condition of experience in different countries in Southeast Asia is very different. And that will create some differences. One very obvious difference, there are specific cities in Southeast Asia that have higher quality of living standards, higher pay, higher salaries. Singapore is by far the best example of this. The amount of money that somebody would earn in Singapore in a month versus the amount of money that somebody would earn in Manila for a month is radically different. And in Indonesia even more so. And so this has created a sort of environment where a lot of people in places like Manila or Jakarta have the understanding that if they want to do well in the industry, they have to go to Bangkok, they have to go to Singapore, And for them, for many of these people, this can be very trying because you're talking about people who have a family at home, they're moving away from their families, etc. It can be very stressful. And so it creates this situation where people will go to one of these leading cities and kind of do their time. You know, I spent a few years there, I saved up some money, but now it's time for me to go back home because my life is not in Singapore. My life is in Manila, or my life is in Surabaya or somewhere like that. The way we've approached that, and I think we've got a very sort of original solution to this problem, is we're a 100% virtual studio. And so everybody who works for Boomzap actually works from home. And so for us, we can take that guy whose normal solution is to say move to Bangkok and say, well, actually you don't have to move to Bangkok. You can stay in Iloilo or wherever it is you're right now. And there, for the same amount of money, you can live a much better life. You don't have to commute. You don't have to, you know, room with a bunch of people in a little tiny house in Singapore. So that's been our solution. I'm not sure that everybody's ready to go start a virtual studio, but I do think people who aren't willing to do that need to be very realistic about the conditions of the cities that they're hiring in. And a very good example for that is Manila. Let's say you put a studio in downtown Manila. For many people, you're talking about a 2-hour commute to work every morning and a 2-hour commute back in the afternoon. And that's not 2 hours in a nice car in traffic. That's 2 hours in the back of an unair-conditioned jeepney, you know, next to a construction worker and hoping that nobody steals your wallet. It can be quite rough. And so when you're talking about being in these locations and starting up places in those locations, you have to be very aware of the experience of your staff when you say, I need you to be in Manila and I need you to work in Makati, or I need you to be in Jakarta and I need you to work downtown Jakarta. These are real challenges that those people face, and that's going to differ by city and by region, not because they're different people or the Vietnamese people are this way but Filipinos are that way, but because the living conditions in their country are going to be very different. And in Southeast Asia, I think it's very dangerous to say, this is how Southeast Asia is. Right? Ho Chi Minh versus Manila versus Singapore are 3 extremely different living conditions, 3 extremely different environments for people to live in. And if you don't understand that, you're going to have a lot of trouble staffing in these regions. Does that sound realistic to you guys?
Was one of my big challenges in Vietnam is because we don't have like education or organization for game development. Mostly the young guys, they love too much game and they just study by themselves. And when they join my company or other developers companies, they have to study again, because what they learn in school or they learn by themselves may not apply to what they will work. So like normally it had me like nearly 1 year for a new guy to be able to work in a real project. So it had time like from classes mentioned before, and it 1 year is a bit cost for us.
Yes, that's very true. We are only activating in Vietnam. We don't have other offices. We have about 300 staff now, so we grew quite big the last few years. For us, it's been very different because we are originally an art outsourcing studio, so we mostly hire artists. And the way we did it is we heavily invested in training. Because when we arrived in 1995, there was no such thing as a game industry in Vietnam. So if you want to find an artist, you got to train an artist. So the way we approached it is we looked for artists, painters, sculptors, lacquerware artists, any kind of art, people with a sense of artistic skills. And then we train them to use software, because we believe you don't become an artist. Either you have it or you don't. But you can learn a tool. You can learn Max, you can learn Maya, you can learn Photoshop. You can learn how to paint. So we are hiring and we are partnering and we are teaming up with training centers, universities. We are providing them with teachers. We are providing them with teaching materials so they can have efficient classes that fit with our needs. And then after that, we can recruit these students and take them on board, and they would spend another 6 months, maybe a year, maybe two, to be trained in-house before being really efficient. But that's what it takes. And so my take for Vietnam would be really investing on training and being patient, and don't be afraid to invest on talents, because a lot of people are afraid that people will leave. You invest 2 years in someone and then this person goes. That's a risk. But if you don't take the risk, then you will never grow anyone. And we are 300, we are only 7 foreigners. We strongly encourage local hires. Almost all of our top managers are locals. Our head of production is Vietnamese. He's been with us for 20 years. Our CTO is Vietnamese. They are at positions that a lot of companies would rather put foreigners for whatever reason. We don't believe that's true. We don't believe that's right. We believe that it takes time, but talents are here. You need to know where to look at and how to invest and how to retain talents. That's another question I think that is very important, is not only you need to know how to bring talents, but you need to know how to keep talents. And staff retention in Southeast Asia, I believe, in Vietnam at least, is something that is not very well known, that's something that companies are not ready to invest in. So for me, this idea that people are changing jobs very often in Vietnam is a shared responsibility between staff, but also companies. But that's a different subject, I guess.
I think, however, everything you just said is extremely important. And that question about retention, I wanted to touch on this because it's the biggest mistake that I hear when people talk about working in Southeast Asia, and that is they focus on the money. And they say, wow, Southeast Asia, we can get people really cheap. And they think, how cheap can we get people in Southeast Asia? Well, Southeast Asians are just like anyone else in the world. If you're treating them like, how cheap can I get them, your retention is going to go down. Sure. And we've just spent a lot of time talking about you're going to have to invest a lot of time and energy in training your staff. If you're going to do that and then turn around and treat them poorly and have them leave, you're only hurting yourself. And so I happen to know all the people on this panel and happen to know a good bit about their companies. And one thing that is a common thread between all of these companies is they pay their staff well, they treat their staff well. And because of that, they have that retention, and the retention is necessary if you're going to be spending that time training. And so when I hear people talk about, oh, Filipinos are really cheap, or, oh, Indonesians, we can get those guys really, really cheap, that's entirely the wrong way to think. The better way to think is, wow, this is a place where people are really excited about games. This is a place where we can get really talented individuals, and as long as we treat them well and pay them well and create a good long-term environment for them where they can build families and build a career, those people are going to stick around. And now you can invest in training, and now it makes sense. And this is actually the #1 mistake that I hear from people who aren't well-versed in Southeast Asia, who want to come down here and start using Southeast Asian labor.
Yeah, I mainly hear it from people coming right away. It's also great that we are in a creative industry. So, like, you need to treat people nice. You need to give them the freedom. You need to give them the tools. I guess we treat people really nice. Like, out of the 100 people, we had 100% retention last year across both studios. Like, nobody quit, nobody changed job. And that's quite amazing because, like, I've been hearing for so many years that both countries, you shift job all the time. It's just not true, and it's not because we are paying more. You just treat people nice, you give them possibilities.
To be fair, you do pay good salaries, though. You're not abusive in your salary levels.
Why would you?
But it's important because there are people who come down who are abusive with their salaries, and I know for a fact that you're not, right?
For me, it's not about salary. I have to say thanks to some outsourcing companies like Lykkegaard did work in Vietnam, because they bring me a lot of good artists. When they quit, they just apply to me, and we have the good artists. and they didn't apply to Choi Entertainment because we pay more salary. I have to say, because we have something like something unique and something new for them to work on. They love game. They want to make a real game. So they come to me. So it's not only about salary. You have to show them like a good vision, a good way, like you are doing now. So they will follow you, not only just because you pay more than other companies.
I would say first and foremost, Southeast Asian developers are developers. And they want the same things that developers anywhere else in the world wants. They want to have some creative input in the work that they're doing. They want to work on good titles. And I think what you said earlier about making sure that you have locals who are being moved into management positions, making sure that local people have a chance to move into those management positions and not feel like there's some sort of glass ceiling of foreigners that I'm going to hit, and knowing that there is a real live career for them in this company, as opposed to having to go out and start their own company if they want to further their careers. None of this is special to Southeast Asia. I could say this exact same thing about the UK or North America, right? This is just human beings behaving like human beings. But what's fascinating to me is to see foreigners come down to this region and think that somehow this is different and none of that applies. All of this seems really common sense, but it's really fascinating to see how many people don't get this when they come down. First and foremost, developers in Southeast Asia are developers. They want the same things that a British or a UK or a American developer would want.
So based on the company retention practices, I think you should always seek employment with those guys. If you're interested, contact them.
Come back, just come.
We are hiring.
Now, let's take the training, because you mentioned that you do lots of company training, also because you could not find initially the right type of people. But how, in this governmental ecosystem, how does the executive take charge of it? Are there some sort of government policy making on training sessions and programs in the country? Are there any game development programs supported to create more talent in the region? Are there maybe some hiring trade shows where you can seek to find the right people? How does it work from a governmental perspective in the region?
For us, nothing at all whatsoever. And I would say even if you took somewhat game design degree at university, you would not be more likely to get a job at us as if you took a computer science degree. Like in games, it's what you do in your free time. And I don't trust the education system to teach about games. I do trust them to give you a basic knowledge about computer science and programming and art and that part, but it's really what you do in your free time that makes you as a game developer or any of all the other positions.
So the university doesn't have any value in the
not for me.
It might training or like, formation, yeah. Nothing.
I would say in some cases it's negative value. I mean, I really don't want to rag on game design schools and such, but one of the issues, and at danger of sounding like I'm generalizing about Asian culture, education is extremely important in Asia. And education in Asia is often thought of as getting the right answer. Right, I'm going to go to school and the teacher's going to tell me what I'm supposed to do and I'm going to get that right answer and I got 100 on my test and everything is good. And so we will get like animation reels from a school where everybody has done exactly the same work because that was what they were told to do in school and that's how they got a good grade. And they haven't done anything beyond that. Right, this is their work, and you say, okay, well, this is great. This was your schoolwork. So where's your personal portfolio? And they'll be like, well, this is what the teacher told me to do. That this is my portfolio, and you're like, well, okay, thank you, goodbye. And at the same time, I'll be getting resumes from people who didn't go to game design programs, who did, oh, look at this Flash game that I did in my spare time, or I was the head of my anime group in school, and we put together this cosplay composition or something like that. Those people tend to make better hires. And so I'm not sure that looking to the government to solve our training problems is necessarily the best route. And that's not to say that they don't have any role to play, but I think it's a very astute statement to say if they're getting good quality core education in mathematics, in programming, in logic, in writing, in English, that would actually be more important to me in my hiring than knowing that somebody taught them how to write a game design doc. I can teach that.
Yeah, as Chris said, if you're expecting the government to do the job for you, then you can wait a long time, probably. They are very well aware of the lack of education system here in Vietnam, and they are heavily ready to invest. They will, and they are starting to do it. We have very good tech schools here in Vietnam. We have polytechnics and everything, but it's not game specifically made. So the way we approached it is, instead of waiting for someone to do it for us, we approached the schools and we said, hey, can we have a system in place where you are teaching stuff for games? And we provide teachers, we provide teaching materials, and we get students in exchange. That's fair, and that's, you know, a lot faster, and it fits to our needs. Now, these schools, these top schools like polytechnics or University of Science, they teach other stuff that are equally important, and that's one of the biggest thing that is missing in a lot of applications that we receive is not about really hard skills, it's about soft skills. English is very weak, presentation is very weak, how to run an interview, how to write a resume, how to communicate, how to talk, how to be productive, be proactive, be on time, there's a lot of things that you can't really that they don't learn at school, that they should a lot more than know how to code or how to write a game design doc.
I would add one of the worries I have about game development programs is they tend to be very focused on what's important in games right now. And as everyone knows, this industry moves very, very quickly, right? Is this particular piece of software that's being used going to be important 10 years from now or 5 years from now? You know, are we all really going to be using Unity in a decade? I don't know, right? If I look back 10 years ago and think about what was big in games 10 years ago, most of that very specific knowledge is kind of useless at this point. But because game development schools have this focus of having people who are like job ready when they graduate, they teach them these very specific, very sort of time-sensitive skills. And what I would really like them to be learning is basic math, right? You know, when I'm hiring coders, I want to know that you have really, and math doesn't change, right? Math is still math. And it actually ends up, this is terrible, the Russian and Ukrainian education systems just simply teach better math. And so a lot of our programmers actually come out of Russia and Ukraine, not because Russians and Ukrainians are smarter, but because their education system is more focused on, at a core level, teaching those basic core skills. By the same token, actually, in Indonesia, there is a very good core education that starts quite early in art. And it's not that they took a special class in digital painting, it's that from a very early age they were taught core art skills. And those skills, those last forever. And so I'm less interested in having game development schools that produce job-ready graduates that know how to use the specific tool of the week. I'm much more interested in universities that are producing well-rounded, intelligent, thinking individuals with good core skills. And if I were to be involved in education, which I'm not in Southeast Asia, I would be pushing for that and not more game development universities.
Is there any government guy here? So, first, I don't really want the government, they set up more like game development course or support that. I just want like they support the student after they graduate, they want to join game industry. Instead of like game industry is a bad thing, you don't have a bright future, you don't have a good future when you join that. That's most of people in Vietnam think about it now. So I just want a game industry is like a very potential, very good industry. You should apply, you should follow your passion. That's enough for me. And because those guys, they have the passion, they willing to learn. They're willing to study by themselves, by tutorial, online course tutorial. They learn by other people from many communities, and they can do the job. So to push them, to pull them, to follow the game industry.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, here in Vietnam, the IT students are decreasing every year. They are less attracted by IT industry because, you know, they think there is no job, maybe their parents want them to do something else. I'm not sure what the reason is, but the IT students enrolling in high level of tech schools, like polytechnics, for example, is decreasing. And out of all the graduates, half of them go pursue their study abroad, and half of them go to work abroad. So this leaves us with 50% of a decreasing pool of IT graduates. And among these 50% that are staying in Vietnam, some of them will be interested into starting their own studio or teaming up with their friends to build a studio. So the pool is decreasing and decreasing and decreasing every year, and I think that's a mistake. We should do whatever we can. The industry should support the schools in order to at least maintain the IT students level to a level that is important for the industry, because IT companies are constantly needing new talents, but the schools are not capable of keeping up the pace because they don't have enough students. So, and there is nothing to do with the school or with the government. It's just people don't want to study IT. So what do we do about that?
Thank you for your insightful comments. I would like to switch now from taking from a governmental high position to the actually grassroots elements and the roots of behavior on people seeking an employment. So from your experience, what is the general pattern for game developers when they seek employment? Do developer meetups help? Are there many occurring in the region? From the social media perspective, are there some hiring channels through which they check for jobs or you recruit? Twitter, LinkedIn, are they effective here? And how can this be improved to target the real talents in the industry?
I can tell you how we hire most of our people, and it's blatant nepotism. Almost everyone in our studio is the sister, brother, cousin, friend, guy I went to school with of somebody else in the studio. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's where the best people come from, right? I mean, we get a lot of resumes from, you know, online ads and stuff like that, and they're all just terrible. And we get good resumes from people who are, you know, hey, I went to school with this person and she's really smart. And now instead of trying to know this person in a 5-minute interview, I know this person from someone I know and trust, knew them for 2 years in college, right? As sad as it is, that's true. And I think this is actually one of the places where universities and that sort of thing do have some value. That being said, one of the other places we hire a lot of people out of is the game jams. Boomzap has been a supporter of the Manila Game Jam for 7 years now. We've been the top supporter of them for 7 years. And we have totally gotten our money's worth out of that in terms of every year we pick up 1 or 2 people who were involved in the Game Jam, because this is the people that we're talking about, the people who are doing games in their spare time. This is something that they're really involved in. The other place that we actually pick up a lot of people in terms of art is just straight off of DeviantArt, right? There are online websites where artists go and do art and share art with each other, and actually they form little friendships and chat with each other, and they have little groups. And every now and then when we need some new artists, one of them will go post there, and I'll get 5 resumes from some guy that maybe my staff have never met, but they've been little internet friends with for a while, talking about their art and talking about what they're doing. And the sort of common thread with all of this is those are people who are actively trying to further their career, whether or not they're in an official sanctioned job. Those people are going to do well in the game industry. They're the people who are going to be able to make it through the long hours and the long weekends and the pain of being in the entertainment industry. Whereas the people who graduated from college and went to their job placement group and made, you know, the same resume everyone else did and then sat around the house and wondered why they didn't get a job, those people are probably not going to do well for us anyway, because they don't have the push to go out and do that work and further themselves while they're looking for work. I don't know if that's your experience, but...
I would say, like, just like the game jams, what actually changed the industry a lot throughout the years is that now you can do a one-man team that can produce a game, do a Flappy Bird, get the top chart. That really inspires people, and they start developing more and more games in their spare time, meaning that the industry is getting bigger and bigger. Because if you applied to game industry, I guess, just 10 years ago, you would need to join like a big studio because you needed a ton of guys to make one game. So the entry barrier is a lot higher for it. Regarding tools, I would say not that many online tools are working that great for us locally. Joachim is probably spending half of his day on LinkedIn, but that's more for a foreign perspective of people getting in. What also changed a lot for us is that people saw our success from outside. We got a lot of branding out of that, and now we start to get people to apply that's like, wow, there's that opportunity in Thailand, and people contacting us to join us just by the branding. That also helps a lot by treating people nice, having a nice office, because we started out with a small townhouse with Thomas and I was packed in the maid's room, game designers packed in the kitchen. It's a mess. People came for job interviews. We hired them. They never turned up on that day because the image from the outside wasn't good enough. So it's also about, as a game company, to, in an industry where so many people get hired and fired, that you also make a more stable approach, and that you can show you're a bigger company, you can do the education, and then people start applying themselves. Friends and friends, friends of friends, and schoolmates and everything else is also awesome, because it's also a connection for a person to trust the company because one of their friends are working there, so they're more likely to apply because they know that you treat people well.
I would add, this is actually not a huge industry in Southeast Asia, and everybody kind of knows each other. And so it is critically important to maintain a good reputation down here. Obviously we've had to let people go from our studio, sometimes for cause, sometimes because, whatever. In those occasions, doing that in such a way that they don't leave your studio and hate you later, because they're going to go out and tell their friends, right? And our ability to hire from friends of friends and people, we have people that used to work for us that are still out there passing around our Facebook job notices because they're like, yeah, I worked for this studio and that was a really great place, right? You have to maintain that reputation because the opposite is very, very dangerous down here. Once you've developed a bad reputation in some of these development communities, you're never going to get out of that. And people talk. So this is critically important.
Yeah, I think it's true. Then over there are many talents still there, and they could be a very good developers or artists. But we should let them find a way to find the companies like us, because the student they graduate and they have no idea. Oh, wow, game industry. Who much it? Who is the developers? Who is the best game companies? It's just about some big guy, but still there many medium or small companies can provide a good games. So we should let them find a way to know us, and from friends, from employee. So we should let them find us, and maybe we should show them what we are doing.
I would also say that not governments, but actually conventions like this one are an important part of this sort of ecosystem. And specifically, I think what's improved recently is exactly what you're talking about. There are tools that allow people to make small indie games. And let's be very frank, 99.999% of those indie games are going to fail. And that's fine, right? They had a good time, they made their game, they got some experience. But you know what? They got to be in the Indiecade, or they got to come to the Indie Prize event, or they got to be, one of these, and every convention is now building their sort of indie thing, right? And a lot of times when I go look at those games, I have no intention of publishing those games or working with those games, but I'm interested in those people. And I know that in 3 or 4 months when they realize that this didn't work out, they're going to be looking for work, right? And those are people I'm interested in. And I'm not the only person who does it. I'm just the one that admits it. And I think this is critically important in the industry, because that's not, if I go to, say, GDC, and they have their big recruiting event where, the big, huge studios have a recruiting booth and all the people come up with their resumes, well, that's kind of interesting. But when I show up at a place that's got an indie game competition and there's 50 really good, hardworking developers with their, heart and sleeve on this little game that they put together, that's a really interesting individual. And that's somebody I'm going to talk to. And maybe he had somebody who worked on that with him who doesn't work with that with him anymore, and that person wants to join our team, et cetera, et cetera. That's very exciting. And in terms of how we can support more of that down here, you know, we're here in Vietnam, in the land of Flappy Bird, right? These kind of success stories are huge. And when it's not a success story, it's not necessarily a failure, because those people got that experience, we saw that, we were there, and that's where those people end up. Those people end up working for our studios, and that's fine too.
I would also add, we do a lot of job fairs and in schools and universities to strengthen the branding. The brand, GlassEgg is a brand. We need to brand GlassEgg across Vietnam to give students the will to join us, and not only us go after them, they need to want to join us. So we do a lot of job fair. We have an internal headhunter in-house that her full-time job is to find talents. So we go to schools, we brand GlassEgg. We stepped back a bit from external headhunting companies because it didn't work out for us. We will rather do everything ourselves. As far as social media goes, we do some Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter doesn't work for us. It's not big in Vietnam. And we have a proper career section in our website. That's the best way for talents to find us. They usually go to your website. If there is no career section, what do you expect? So they know exactly what kind of jobs they can apply for, how they can apply for. And I would also suggest to be very conscientious on how you recruit, and how your recruitment process is very important, because it says a lot about the company. We try to answer everyone, even when it's a no. When you are scheduling an interview, we are trying to make it in a shorter time possible. Don't make them wait like 2 months for a job, because obviously when you go back to the interview, the person is not available anymore. You're not unique as a company. There are other options out there, and you need to seduce the talents to join you, and not the other way around, I think.
I'd just like to point out the importance of one thing you just said. I have yet to talk to anyone in Southeast Asia that was happy with the results of external headhunting. I've never heard anyone say, like, yeah, we hired these external headhunters and that really worked out for us. I've never heard that story. So I think that was an important piece of information.
Right. We're running out of time, but I would like to take one question, a very quick question, if anybody from the audience has one. If not, it has been a pleasure talking to you guys. Now, remember, these guys are hiring, so if you want to speak to them today or tomorrow, go and have a chat and see what their companies are doing and what are their needs and what are your needs as well. And thank you very much for a great session here. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.